I'm so glad this movie didn't get made. Let's get into it. Jem and I, no pun there, are going to disagree heavily in this video. Let's get into it.
Yeah, it's going to get pretty heated, and I'm going to need your guys' support in the comments. Moving on to number 10, the honorable mentions, the runners-up, we have Iron Man 17 from 1969, the first appearance of Madden Mask.
Hit that like, slap the subscribe button. You know commenting will enter you to win this Omni-Man Tyler Kirkham variant for our 55K milestone giveaway. We have a 9.4 record breaker selling for $215 back in 2006, up 79%, selling for $384 this week, and it didn't stop there. Also on the runners-up list, the much larger list that we compile these comic books from, issue 18 also broke records. A 9.2 sold for $384, last selling last January for $264. That's up 45%.
Now, Madden Mask most recently appeared toward the end of Nick Spencer's Spider-Man, and she was actually first introduced as Whitney Frost in Tales of Suspense, issue 98.
Villains from Iron Man's Rogues Gallery. Why so much attention as of late? I mean, we haven't seen a lot of these sales, and there aren't a whole lot of high-grade copies that hit the market. Since 2015, the 9.4 has only sold 4 different times, and one of which was this sale we just reported on.
And during that same time, the CGC 9.6 only sold 6 times, which makes sense when you look at the census count. It has almost half of the amount as the 9.4. There are 30 CGC 9.4s on the census, whereas there are only 13 of the 9.6.
There's only 6 9.8s, and there's only been one publicly sold 9.8 since 2015. Next at the list, at number 9, we have Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 7. Debuting in 1984, whether it be Madden Web spec or She-Hulk spec, this book just broke records in a newsstand.
Yeah, there's not much going on with Julia Carpenter, the second Spider-Woman, but this is the first battle between She-Hulk and Titania, which already played out on screen. A newsstand CGC 9.8 sold for $296 back in August. It's up 64% with this all-new record-breaking sale of $485.
No Julia Carpenter yet, but the spec is real. We're hearing rumors that she may be in the Madam Web movie that's just going to debut in 2023, and we have a huge cast already announced. Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Emma Roberts, Celeste O'Connor, Isabella Merced, and Adam Scott from Parks and Rec fame.
It seems like every issue from Secret Wars has become a key over time, and there is a lonely CGC 9.9 that has never been publicly sold.
And now the disagreement will begin at the list at number 8. Silver Surfer, The Ultimate Cosmic Experience, debuting in 1978. Issue number 1, the 132-page story out of continuity, written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby.
Now, this was the last collaborative effort between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and was scripted to be adapted into a trippy 70s movie.
A rock opera by Lee Kramer approached them back in 1976, instructing them to make a script, a comic book, so they can adapt a Norrin Rad, portrayed by Frank Zane, a bodybuilder, Olivia Newton-John as a female Silver Surfer, and with music possibly going to be made by legendary musician Paul McCartney.
A CGC 9.4 came to market and broke record. It sold for $200 back in 2019. It's up 100%, now selling for $399.
There are 8 copies graded at 9.4, 11 9.6s, and 5 9.8s. I'm glad that this movie was never created. It would have been atrocious. But Jem, I understand why you want to see it though.
Tom, we deserve to see this movie. The footage that you saw was from Xanadu, the movie that they made instead of the Silver Surfer Cosmic Experience.
It's also worth mentioning that the only time we revisit this Silver Surfer alt-reality is in the 2-issue Parable Silver Surfer story that debuted in 1988. Shout out Mobius. Next at the list, at number 7, meet Corliss Archer number 1. 1948, the debut of the Headlight cover.
We've been seeing a lot of these Golden Age books pre-code horror end up on the list over the last few weeks. Now, this one in particular was referenced in Seduction of the Innocent, the book that led to the Comics Code Authority, due to the headlight covers. I'll let your imagination run wild with you. A CGC 5.0 sold for $293 back in 2020, and it's up 71%, now selling for $500.
There are only 9 copies graded at a 7.0 or above. 2 at a 9.4, which is the highest grade that exists. And it sold last in 2017 for $3,100. What a amazing piece of comic book history.
Moving on to number 6 on the list, we're going to the 60s, 1960 with Detective Comics 276, the second appearance of Batmite.
The little guy, the comic relief, at 8.0, sold for $282 back in 2014, and that's up 83%, selling for $516. There's only one copy graded at a 9.2. Last sale was in 2020. There are 6 copies graded at 9.0. Back in 2020, it sold. 8.5, 6 copies last selling in 2020, and an 8.0 last selling in 2020. This book doesn't come up often.
Now, this might be a coincidence, but they are introducing Nightmite in the pages of Nightwing 98, which comes out in November. Did this cause this collector to go seek out the second appearance? Could be.
Tough to say, Jem, but what I do know is that Nightmite looks adorable, the Dan Hip variant looks outstanding, and Tom Taylor can do no wrong. He has been writing the best book at DC now for 2 years running. Hot damn.
And speaking of second appearances, moving on to number 5, we have Tales to Astonish, issue 64 from 1965. It's the second appearance of the leader, and we all know why he's on this list.
First cover appearance and second appearance of Atuma, Black Panther spec, a triple key, an 8.0, going for $135 back in December, up 181%. Shout out Logan, selling for 380 bones.
You mentioned She-Hulk spec, and the overall consensus is that Tim Blake Nelson will reprise his role as the leader at the end of She-Hulk, but he is confirmed for Cap 4 New World Order.
This is a great opportunity to highlight how important timing is when purchasing collectibles to invest in. This same 8.0, same serial number, back in February sold for $100. Now it's selling for $380. You can buy a 3.0 for $100 right now. However, back in February, you could have gotten an 8.0 for that same price.
And the best way to keep up with that timing is by downloading the best comic book app in existence, Key Collector Comics. Not only will you get key alerts, but you'll also get access to these lists days before the video comes out. Use code TOM101 to get a free 2-week subscription.
Support the show. And next at the list at number 4, we have Avengers number 12 spiking because of Game of Thrones?
It's a book that's spiking due to the comments section. From 1965, a 16-year-old George R.R. Martin with a published fan letter.
Now, we all know about Fantastic Four number 20, the first published work of George R.R. Martin. This is the letters pages, the first attempt of community involvement to bring together comic readers before the internet. I mean, they even publish the addresses of the fans inside the comic books, essentially doxing them.
Yeah, that wouldn't really fly in 2022. George R.R. Martin wrote, "These days, in interviews, I'm often asked which writers influenced me the most when I started out. There were a lot of them, but the greatest influences are the earliest influences, and I think at the beginning, there was only Stan Lee."
I encourage the community to check out these letters pages because this wasn't the only writer that would reach out to Stan Lee and Marvel. We have Roy Thomas in Fantastic Four number 5, Dave Cockrum in Fantastic Four 36, and Jerry Conway in Fantastic Four 50.
Now, it could be House of Dragon that prompted this sale, but a CGC 9.0 sold for $576 back in July, and it's up now 49%, selling for $860.
And now at the list at number 3, Pre-Howard the Duck, competing with Donald Duck, Archie's superhero duck in Super Duck number 1, debuting in 1944. I haven't even heard of this, Jem.
Yeah, this is one that I'm not super familiar with either. It was published by Archie Comics. It's basically a rip-off Donald Duck with superpowers, but it lasted for 94 issues over 16 years. And we have a CGC 6.0 that broke record.
Back in 2020, it sold for $1,020. It's up 42% this week, selling for $1,453. And when you look at the census count, it makes sense. The highest graded copy is a 7.5, and there's only one of them, last selling in 2011 for $700. The 7.0 has 2 copies graded, last selling in 2013 for $561. There's only one 6.5 and 2 6.0s. And although this would only last for 16 years, way back in the 60s, we have a attempted relaunch back in 2020, but it only lasted 1 issue.
Superpowered ducks, I could see somebody trying to adapt that into a movie. Didn't we just have Super Pets? Moving on to number 2 on the list, we've talked about the prototype Hulk, we've talked about the prototype Doom, and now we have Boom Magazine, issue 2 from 1973 with the prototype Wolverine.
If you enjoy what we do and want to support the show directly, you can join the October Mystery Mail Call, one per box. You're giving me an excuse to send you comics every month. And this month, we're sending out something spooky. Cover art done by David Max. Something is Killing the Children 25. We made 2 different virgin covers going out at random, one per box, not both. ComicTom101.com to join. Link is in the description. Boom Magazine number 2 is not really something I can imagine publishers being able to do in 2022. Essentially creating a periodical asking for ideas from the community so that Marvel may be able to riff off them and create something unique.
Yeah, imagine that. I mean, this was published a year and a half before Wolverine would first appear, and the character was named the Wolverine, who had a healing factor, a metal exoskeleton, and was the product of experimentation.
Can you see the similarities, and can you imagine the legal mess? We have a 9.6 back in 2020 selling for $700, up 79% selling for 1,250 bones. Adamantium covered bones.
And before we jump into number 1 on the list, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a video. We have what could be considered another prototype. This is from the Golden Age, Marvel Tales 116, with a story called Werewolf by Night.
We have a werewolf on the cover, debuting in 1953, and would be part of the chopping blocks that the Comics Code would implement. And this book does not come up often. It's super scarce. Only 40 copies are graded on the census. 2 at a 7.0, 1 at a 7.5, and 2 at an 8.0, which is why we have a 7.5 record-breaking sale this week.
Now, being that we don't have any prior sales data on the 7.5, let's take a look at some lower grades, and we're going to go in chronological order. In November of 2021, we had a 5.0 sell for $1,292 and a 3.5 selling for $850.
By the way, these 6 sales that we're reporting on are the only publicly recorded sales in comic history. In January of this year, a 2.0 sold for $312. March, 5.0 sold for $1,560, and in April of this year, a 2.0 sold for $550, and that's the same copy that sold back in January for $312.
And it took a little dive in August. A 2.0 sold for $485, leading us to the 7.5 with no prior sales data selling for $4,000.
4K hot damn comic fam, we appreciate your time today. As always,
Geek responsibly and stay minty fresh.
Enough said. Look at this hat. It's pretty cool, right? It's by Kickstradamus, celebrity custom designer. And you can see our collaboration this week at New York City Comic Con. Link in the description to follow me on Whatnot. Me and all my homies are headed to the East Coast for NYC, the comic book convention, to attend. And if you can't be there, join us virtually on the best new place to buy and sell collectibles, Whatnot. Available for both Androids and iPhones. Dollar start auctions that last as little as 15 seconds long. The sponsor of the show, making so much possible. We have 2 other videos for you to check out. We'll see you very soon.